everybody, my name is Victoria. Welcome back to my channel, and this is my catch up with you. January wrap up, February wrap up, March TBR. It's everything. I haven't filmed in a while. I haven't been in my booktube flow lately because I just had a lot of things happening in life. Some positive, some negative. And so I am sort of finally moving forward from those things. And I do like to sort of like catch you up on life things if you are interested. But I just feel like you all have followed my channel for like quite some time, and I consider you to be friends. And so I do kind of just want to do like a life update chat thing of what has been going on, why I disappeared, and then coming back and all of that. So I am sort of bearing my soul a little bit here today before we get into the books. So if you are not interested in that part of this, I will put a timestamp so that you can jump into when I start talking about the books. But I just want to kind of give you like a life update where I'm at, what's going on with me, because I do feel like it does sometimes like affect how I talk about things. And I don't know, I feel that we have a friendship. Many of you have been following my channel since the beginning. And so, yeah, well, I'm just going to jump right in. So first of all, I am literally having one of the worst school years of my life. I am a teacher, and something about this school year, many things are sort of like disintegrating while like I still have to keep going and still be there for the kids, but so much in my specific school district has just been disintegrating, like in ways that you just wouldn't even believe. And I can't even get into the details of it, but it has been so mentally taxing and emotionally taxing also. And then just, I don't know, I think as teachers right now in America, I think if you talk to many teachers, I don't want to say most, I don't want to speak for most, but I think if you talk to many teachers, we just feel unvalued and abused. Like there's no other word for it. And in my district in particular, it's just been really, really rough. And just getting like no support in places that I need support. And I know that sounds so vague and like strange, but like if you have a teacher in your life, it's rough out there. And this has been unlike any other school year I've ever had. And it's just getting rougher, even though, you know, it seemed like part of the rough part of it was behind me. And coming home from work today, like there was some other things that have come up and that we've learned, and drama. And it's just been like I'm not even surprised anymore when I'm watching my workplace fall apart, because it's just like at this point it's like, yeah, of course that's happening, because I don't expect good things to happen anymore at work, which is a really sad place to be, and a really hard place mentally to sort of like disentangle myself from that, from like the rest of my life. So yeah, just my workplace. I think if anyone, even if you're not a teacher, but you've had any experience with a toxic kind of workplace, with drama, with people, with having just poor boss leadership, like really bad leadership, then you understand that feeling of just like, you know, that meme where the dog is sitting there and it's like flames behind him and he's like smiling and he's going, this is fine. That has been my school year, like completely, in a very real way. So there's been that. And then apart from that, just going more into my personal life, my husband and I have been trying for a baby, for a second kid. We've been trying for some time, And at the end of January, I learned I was pregnant. And a few weeks later, I had a miscarriage. And so I also have been managing that and the feelings that come with that. And, you know, the elation and excitement of having that, like, I'm pregnant feeling and just being excited for the future. And then to have that just tragically end. And yeah, I will say I was fortunate that my miscarriage was early, and so it was not as traumatic as I know many women experience, especially if they're further along. But it still is almost like feeling like you lost a loved one, even though it is not someone you've ever met. It's such a surreal experience. And as a teacher, well, first of all, I don't have any sick days left because I've used them all with my son when he was sick. So I have 0 sick days. So if I miss work, I lose my pay for that day. It comes out of my paycheck. And also, school districts don't, at least in California, they don't consider miscarriages bereavement. So they don't count it as like grieving or anything. Like if you lose a loved one, they give you like 5 days of bereavement time, and they don't do that with a miscarriage. So I basically I had a miscarriage over the weekend, like a week ago. And I had to turn around and go back to work because we are basically at the moment living paycheck to paycheck with all of our bills and paying for daycare, which is a huge, basically paying for my son's daycare is like renting an apartment in addition to my mortgage that I have. And so it is just like all of our money is just being depleted. So I can't take off work because we need the money so badly. And I just had to like kind of push down my feelings and go straight back to work. And it has been so difficult. Like it really has. So I'm actually surprised I'm sitting here talking to you right now. But I think because I've had to sort of pull up my bootstraps and push on with my life, I also want to push on with the things that I love, and I don't want the setbacks and tragedies of life to stop me from participating in the world and in things that I love to do. So I'm getting better. I feel a little more normal, but I hold on to hope that I can get pregnant again and we will have our second kid. But yeah, that's just kind of what's been going on with me. Just a roller coaster, and then dealing with the drama of my workplace and having also my personal life kind of in some shambles. Everything's fine. Like everyone's healthy. My 2-year-old is like running around like crazy and happy as a clam. It's like reckoning with so much of my life is beautiful and I'm so blessed in so many ways. And then also having this tragedy and heaviness in your heart at the same time. So yeah, that was my little life update for you. I think I have done myself a disservice over the years not being like 100% authentically candid in myself with people who care about me. And I as you know, this is YouTube, and so I do know this is the internet, and it's not like everyone who's watching my videos cares about me, but this is a special community that I've built over the 5 or 6 years that I've been on BookTube, and like I feel that we are friends. And so I just wanted to kind of give you just a little window into what's been going on, and so that you can sort of interpret the radio silence, but also just to, you know, friends tell each other what's been going on. So there you have it. So life update over. I have had a really good reading year so far, and so I actually started the year finishing what will maybe be my very favorite book of the year. I don't know. It's definitely been my favorite book so far, but I haven't read a ton of things, but I have high hopes. It's definitely going to be on my top 10 favorites list by the end of the year. And so that is Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wong. Oh my goodness. What a knock out of the park for me. Just loved it. I also love this edition with this red sprayed edges. Very cool. But this is a fantasy / dark academia story by Emma Wong, and she wrote also The Sword of Kaigen, which is also a fantastic fantasy standalone. And I actually think I like this one better. They're very different, don't get me wrong. They're in completely different worlds. They have completely different magic systems. I like this one the best. I think because of the themes that it explores, and I also just felt like it was like more well crafted. It was better crafted. It was honed. You can tell that like Emma Wong have really like analyzed every little bit of her storytelling with this one. Whereas Sword of Kaigen, there were some like oddities in it that was like, that's an interesting side tangent story. If you know if you've read it, you know. But this one just felt like it was just so perfectly done, so well crafted, so well written. So, okay, summary. What is this book about? We follow Siona Freinen, I think is how you say her name. Siona is how I said it in my head. And she strives to be the first female mage to ever be admitted to the High Magistry at the University of Magics and Industry. She's an exceptionally skilled mage and has dedicated her life to achieving this goal very single-mindedly. She does pass the exam to get into the school, and she is given the title of High Mage. And so she's the only female High Mage walking around with this whole society of men. And so she is not really accepted by them. She's actually bullied quite a bit, and so she is navigating this. She's a tough cookie though, like she's very tough and she can handle them, and she sort of just kind of keeps her head down and is like, well, I'm just gonna be the best I can at this, and I'm gonna show you all that I'm the best. And so she keeps her head down, she does her work, and she makes some unexpected friendships. She makes some discoveries about the world she lives in. And she basically starts working with an unlikely friend. And through their friendship and working relationship, they gradually uncover sort of the dark underbelly of what's really going on in their world. And so that is the premise. I thought it was an amazing novel. She impressed me so much with her deeply layered characters, her thematic exploration, and the moral questions and the moral grayness, and kind of the characters coming to their own conclusions about, do you live in that moral grayness, or do you take a stance one way or another? And the cost of that and how it costs our characters is explored. The magic system's pretty cool. It's very complex at first, so I definitely had some difficulty wrapping my head around things for a little while. But once you kind of get a good picture of how the pieces are coming together, it's pretty crazy. And also, I will also note, it's dark. It is truly dark academia. does have violence and it is gruesome in some ways. I wouldn't say over the top, but certainly affecting. It definitely affected me. So a year or two ago, I also read Babel by R.F. Kuang, and this book to me feels a lot like what Babel wanted to do and what Babel kind of tried to do. And Babel did not hit the mark for me. I think I gave it 4 stars. I feel like this is what Babel wanted to be, but this book just does it so much better as far as the themes and how like an effective conclusion. And I know they're by different authors. Those are 2 books by very different authors, but I feel like that's my comparison as far as like the vibes and the thematic material. Yeah, there was just so many layers to this book. I just thought it was fantastic. This is a standalone and it packs a punch. And so I just really appreciate that more and more, like the more fantasy I read. So there you have it. 5 stars, if you couldn't tell. I just absolutely loved my reading experience with this. So do recommend. First read of the year. Quite a way to start the year. The second read was a book of the month book that I got many moons ago. This was from 2021, so this had been languishing on my shelf for a really long time, and I finally read it. And this is the final revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. It is sort of in the vein of, I would say, like Daisy Jones and the Six. It is in a bit of like an interview style, and so you are following a music duo. You're definitely following the what's her name? Opal. You're following Opal a little bit more than Nev. Opal is definitely at the center of this. She's an African-American woman in the 60s, and so she basically had this famous interracial rock duo from the 1970s. That's kind of when they made it big, but I think they kind of start in the 60s and then they're famous in the 70s. And so you go kind of between them telling the story of the past, and then you're also in the present times, and you are seeing them potentially come together for a reunion tour. And so through that, you kind of learn like what happened to them, like why did they, like how did they form, and then you kind of see them in their successful days, and then why did they break up, and then why are we trying to get them back together, and you know, is that going to happen, this reunion tour? So it's sort of like a mockumentary style book, from like the humble beginnings of a interracial rock duo in a very politically tumultuous time. I was entertained by this book, and I did the audiobook actually, which I would say if you're going to try this book, I recommend the audio. I think that's a good way to go. It did have a full cast, and I think the audiobook also won some awards for being a full cast and the voice acting. It's a really good audiobook, so I would recommend it. I think that's a really good way to consume this book. My main problem, honestly, was I didn't like Opal. There was something about, I think, just like a personality thing. She's portrayed as very aggressive and sort of countercultural, and also like selfish to me. There wasn't like a part of me that was rooting for her as a person. Like I could see the struggles that she would come against, but she's a little bit unlikable, or she was for me, and that really stopped me from caring as much as I wanted to about Opal. There's in particular this is maybe a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear about it, maybe skip like 30 seconds forward. But there is some infidelity in Opal's life, and that is actually a pretty central part of the story. And I just couldn't, like, I couldn't get behind it. I didn't have as much sympathy for her through the infidelity. And I think you have to sort of accept that. But like, yeah, I don't know. There was just like decisions that Opal herself made as a character that I found selfish and self-serving and immature, and I just didn't like her. It was weird because I cared about the story, and I understood what the author was trying to have me feel, but I just didn't like Opal. So that was my problem with this book. I just found her sort of to be obnoxious sometimes as a character too. And I don't know if maybe that also had to do with maybe the voice actor in particular was more aggressive in her portrayal of Opal. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know if I would have a different experience if I was reading it with my eyeballs versus listening to it. But yeah, I just didn't like our main character all that much. And I found this book ultimately probably going to be forgettable for me. So that was my own personal experience. I do still, actually, I've never read Daisy Jones and the Six, but I know that it's very similar in style. So it sort of turns me off to Daisy Jones and the Six, but I do still want to try that book. But yeah, I think I didn't like the main character enough to care. So I think I landed at like 3 stars for this one. So why is everything I read in January red? I don't know. Such a red theme. Okay, speaking of a red theme, the next book that I read was The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner by Stephanie Meyer. This is a strange little novella thing in between. Let's see, where does it come? It comes after Breaking Dawn and before Life and Death, which is my next Stephanie Meyer Twilight series book to read. I reread the first, the quartet from Twilight through Breaking Dawn. I reread that in the last like couple years. I spent some time doing that, and I had a grand old time rereading them. And so this was one that I had never read before. And so this is a YA paranormal romance fantasy. This one has a strong romance element in it, but I would say it's actually a little bit darker and more violent than Twilight even was. It gets kind of gruesome in this one too. We follow Bree Tanner, and she is a newborn teenage vampire. You actually meet her in Eclipse, and she has sort of a tragic ending. And so I found it, when I started this book, I thought it was so weird that we were following Bree Tanner, because she is literally like a very, very minor character in Eclipse. She's like a blip on the radar. And then we have a novella about her. So I was like, that's so strange. Weirdly, it kind of worked in a weird way. I liked this more than I expected to. So she's a newborn vampire. She's living in this coven with other newborn vampires, and they sort of don't know what's going on. Like, they know that someone is leading them, that they have a leader. They don't really know who their leader is. She's just described as like her or she or something. And so they don't know who their leader is, but they sort of have someone like running their coven. And they don't really know what's normal about vampires and what's not. And they have like this weird little group. And so it's sort of about them discovering what their purpose is. I feel like, I don't know. I don't know if you care if I spoil things about Eclipse. I'm not going to, but it's just hard to talk about this with, like, if you don't know about Twilight. But basically, these newborn vampires, they have a purpose, and they're learning. They're learning what their purpose is. And then there's a romance also with Bree and another newborn vampire. And I feel like the same things that I enjoy about the Twilight series, I still enjoyed about this. Is there a good reason for the story to exist? Absolutely not. Completely unnecessary. But I like the exploration of the Volturi and the vampire politics. So you get some of that in here too. And also just the angst and the mood and the setting. It's all here in such a short little story. And it has a little bit of like a different perspective of the Cullen family. You don't see the Cullens till the very, very end of this, but like seeing the Cullens through Bree's eyes was kind of fun and interesting, and it makes you, I think it makes you like the Cullens more, and it gives you a different like appreciation about the Cullens by the end of it, even though like, you know, the Cullens are the main heroes anyways. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if this needed to exist. Like, you already like the Cullens, so if the point of this book is that you like the Cullen family more, why? So completely an unnecessary story. I will hold to that. But it was still like 4 stars for me because it's just fun. Stephenie Meyer knows how to write a fun story, and I just like the Twilight world. What can I say? I'm a Twihard forever. I wouldn't recommend it unless you also like Twilight. Otherwise, you're not gonna want to pick this up or like it at all. So unless you like Twilight, I would give it a go if you're like me, and Twilight will just like always have a special place in your heart. Otherwise, this is not worth your time. But for me, it was. So 4 stars for me. Adding to the read books. Only read in January. Okay. Oh yes, one other thing I read in January was for Tiffany's Patreon, and that is White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. So this is also novella and a very short classic. And this is such a simple premise. This is a lonely man with a desire for connection, and he meets a woman. It's just a boy meets girl story in the winter. And so reading this in the winter, you know, it does not snow where I live, but like the snowy setting, the pining for each other in the winter, in the cold walks through the snow together. Like, just what a vibe this book is. I loved it from beginning to end. This was 5 stars, even though not as complex and deep as many Dostoevsky works. I have read a couple now. I have read Crime and Punishment, and I've read The Brothers Karamazov. Is that all I've read? I guess so. I didn't finish Demons, so I have Demons, but never finished it. But yeah, this is nothing like those. Nothing like those at all. It is predictable, it is short, but it's beautifully written, and it's full of pining and angst, and it's all winter vibes and sadness. So what more could you want? I love that kind of thing. And I loved the philosophical musings of the main character. It was so pensive, so tragic, so Russian. What's not to love? We love a good Russian winter setting with a love story at the center. I loved it. 5 stars. Okay, moving into February. I have been, well, okay, I'll start with what I finished. I finished only one thing in February, and that was also for Tiffany's Patreon, Beautiful Minutia. Did I say her channel name? I don't know. I'm getting an itchy nose. Sorry, I keep scratching my nose. It's probably really annoying to watch. So The Black Tulip by Alexandre Dumas. Sorry, I gotta work on my French accent. So The Black Tulip by the same person who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo, which I have read. He also wrote The Three Musketeers, which I have not read. And so this is a much lesser known work by him. I had not heard of this before, actually. And to read this book, you kind of have to have a background in the Netherlands, and you have to know a few things going into it. There's some like Netherlands history that is very key to this book and to the setup of the book, specifically with like leadership and overthrowing of leadership and like the climate. You really need a little bit of a background knowledge of that. So once I kind of grasped that, this was also a pretty fun read. You follow someone who is making this black tulip. He's basically entering this contest kind of thing where like you'll win money if you grow a black tulip, and apparently that's very difficult to do. And he is growing a black tulip, And then there is someone else who's very jealous of him. and so the tulip craze was apparently a thing in the Netherlands at this time. So also I learned about that, which is really interesting. Tulips are a pretty cool flower, I will say, and not one that I see very much. So basically this man becomes the source of envy for another man, and it goes from there. It's got some similarities to the Count of Monte Cristo. I'll just say that. I don't want to spoil too many things, but it has some parallels for sure. There's also a little bit of a love story at the center, so it was appropriate for a Valentine's Day kind of month in February. And I was thoroughly entertained. Once I kind of got past the initial like who, what, where, when, why, which took me some time. Once you kind of get to that point, it really reads like an action adventure kind of thing, which you sort of expect with Dumas from some of his other works, if you're familiar with his works. So this was really fascinating. I gave it 4 stars. Maybe, I'm not sure if this would be something that I would recommend to just anyone, because I don't think it's like the place to start with Dumas for sure. And it's I feel like this is just such an oddball kind of story too. It's very odd. But it was fun. And there are, you know, characters to love and to hate, and you do root for the main character. And I learned some things. I learned some things about history that I didn't know before. So the Black Tulip, it was interesting. That is unfortunately the only thing I finished for my TBR. So for February, my February TBR. So that means I will be reading most of my February TBR in March. So I will just kind of quickly go through that. I am currently reading still The Words of Radiance. I am just continuing to plug through. I'm like 30% at this point. So I'm doing better. I'm going a little faster than I did with my Way of Kings reread last year, which took me a whole year. So I don't feel like this is going to take me a whole year this time, but I'm still slower than I would like to be. I wish I was further than 30% at this point. Ugh, terrible. So maybe I'll take like half a year to finish this reread. Also, I've started to read First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is a romance that is very like Sleepless in Seattle based. A woman calls in, well, she doesn't call in, her daughter calls her into this like romance hotline because her daughter is concerned about her and her daughter wants her to date again. And the person who runs the hotline and her, they have this like deep conversation, which is very sweet at the beginning. And then it kind of goes from there. So it's, you know, will they meet? Will they meet? They just met on the phone. Will they meet? Will they fall in love? So I'm still the beginning of that. It's very Sleepless in Seattle. Almost a direct ripoff. But B.K. Borison's version of that. So this is just brain candy. I just wanted something that was happy and fluffy since I've been dealing with some hard things lately. So this was exactly what I needed. I've been really enjoying reading this before bed, and it's just like no stress at all. Very like quippy. I feel like the dialogue in this is very quippy, and like trying maybe a little too hard to be clever with the quips, but I'm just going with it. So reading that right now. And then also on the docket for March will be The Women. I want to read The Women by Kristen Hanna. I've been wanting to read this for so long, since it came out last year. So I will hopefully do that in March. Also, oh, I should pull it out. Oh, it's too far away. Oh, well, I'll put a picture. Linden Falls by Joshua Hershey. Linden Falls is a book by Joshua Hershey, and he gifted this to me for a review, so I need to review it. I've taken a really long time to do that. I'm so sorry. I am putting it high on my priorities in March. And then also a goal in February was to read The Empress of Time, which is a second book in a duology by Kylie Lee Baker. I did not get to that. I want to get to it in March. This is a Japanese sort of YA fantasy, Japanese folklore / horror, and I really liked the first book, so I'm hoping the duology ends well. And if there's one middle grade book that I read. I want to read Bea and the New Deal Horse, which is for Kate Howe's Patreon, the Kindred Spirits book club. And so this would be my sort of middle grade March representation. I'm not really going to put anything else on the TBR because we're just going to see how it goes, since February was atrocious. January was a good reading month, but February was not. So I don't want to like set the bar too high and then set myself up to fail. So if I can just sort of, you know, continue to work through what was my February TBR and then we'll push it into March. Those are the plans. So here's a silly thing. I completely neglected to mention the beginning of our Anathem read-along that is hosted by Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia and a few other people also. And we are starting this read-along, and I totally dropped the ball and did not make a video about it, and I also didn't even mention it in this video. So my deepest apologies. I am looking forward to reading this. It has been a long running, almost running joke at this point that Rich from Rich Freeman, he's a dear friend. This is like the book he's always trying to get us to read, so we are doing it. We hope you join us. I will link a video or two down in the description box because I'm a terrible booktuber and a terrible host and didn't mention it at all. Okay, that's all. That is everything to catch you up on. What a video, huh? That was a long video. And many topics were discussed. So if you've made it all the way to the end, first of all, apologies for bumping the camera. And then second of all, I appreciate you. And if you made it all the way to the end, I would love to know if you want to leave a sun emoji. Let's leave a sun emoji because it's February. I live in California and it's like 80 degrees outside. So I'm having a very warm winter at the moment. Okay, that's where we're at. So that is my bookish catch up for you. Thank you for hanging in there with my very sporadic upload schedule. I'm hoping to get back on a weekly schedule again. Hoping. So I appreciate you all and thank you for watching. Until next time, keep reading great books and have a wonderful rest of your day.